In-housing, that's what we're going to talk about. Building in-house agencies. The title is Everything You Should Know. You shouldn't really know anything, but we're afraid to ask. But please ask me anything. I'd like this to ideally be more interactive and conversational. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I've got no sales slides. It's just, I just want to share the experiences I have of over 10 plus years of leading and building in-house agencies. Does anybody have an in-house agency in their company or work with one or even know what one is?
How do you define in-house agencies versus in-house resources? I have in-house resources.
Your marketing team?
But I don't know if I should call it agencies. So how do you define competency, skill set versus agency?
That's a good question. There are levels of maturity. An agency is, in effect, everything you would expect from an agency, but only working on your brand, sitting in your building. I'll come to that in the slides. It could be the other end of the spectrum. They're doing small amounts of design and production for you. Cool. So let me tell you a little bit about the UK. So I believe we have the highest level of in-house agency adoption, maybe in the world. Big brands are doing it though. It's not new. You'll recognize all of these brands. And I was asked, to maybe share some insights from the UK that you guys, might learn from to adopt here. Sorry to be speaking in English. I hope that's okay. But tell me and I'll slow down or ask me to repeat anything. So yeah, like the stats show, 90% of companies in the UK definitely have some form of in-house agency, however you want to call that. So it is pretty normal, but it's growing very quickly now in popularity and adoption. So I can share some insights of how you might want to do that. So, but it's not all or nothing. They can't do everything. They're always part of a creative ecosystem world with other specialist agencies. So the stat is always about 80% have a whole range of agencies, not just one in-house. So think about it as a whole ecosystem. They can't do everything in-house, but it's shifted and it's growing annually and they can do more and more in their levels of sophistication. So financial services is my area of experience and expertise. There may be a notion, especially if you're not familiar with in-housing, that it's more for retail or e-commerce or things like that of high volume. Actually, it really is suited for any brand who wants to take back control of their output and have it in-house, but especially complex, high volume, regulated industries. I specialize in pensions, retail banking, asset management, insurance. It's those high volumes of customer comms, but you could equally say that for consumer products or water companies. It really is applicable for all. But financial services especially are really booming in this area, and we can learn a lot from them. So the classic fintechs, as you may have heard of Monzo and Starling Bank, are now mainstream banks, but on an app in the UK landscape of financial services. I used to run the in-house agency for NatWest Group. It was one of the UK's biggest at the time. High profile work they're now doing by sponsoring Team GP, as you might have seen in the recent Olympics, but lots of digital innovation as well. The phone screens there are Scottish Widows who make pension mirrors, so you can actually visualize what you're going to look like older. Nobody wants to do that, but older, and then also identify with your pension needs. So these sort of trends are the B2B marketing and the big complex world of financial services is really driving as well the adoption of in-house agencies. And also they're changing their brands to become digital brands, like lots of brands are. But this is actually the gift for the in-house team. No longer is it big, expensive television shoots with horses on the beach or the Scottish widow, who's obviously was a human. They're now digitizing, so those assets can be really easily adapted and owned by in-house teams, working in partnership with the brand agency on the big concept and big brand ideas. Just helps set some of that context which is driving this growth. So the first question is, does my in-house agency need to be in-house? Do they need to actually be sat in my office working with my marketing team? It's your choice, yes and no. Pre-COVID, it was generally in-house. The team we had at NatWest were about 130 people, complementing a marketing team of about 400 people. So they were a significant part of the whole marketing capability. And they do physically sit in the client's building. And that is the secret sauce. You live and breathe the same commercial agenda. You treat what were your clients as colleagues. You know, you remove this wall of outsourced agency and creative supplier. Lego is a very famous in-house agency, and as you can tell, there's no sort of suffering from their creative output. It's a very strong quality of creative work, so we can learn a lot from them. So I'm just posing, if you're interested in exploring this, 6 areas which really you can ask yourself in your marketing team if you were about to consider going on a journey of in-housing some of your creative services. These are a summary slide, and then I'll take each one in turn, but please ask any questions. So the work stack, okay, that's maybe an odd word. It's basically all the work you need to do to support the business. So marketing obviously are responsible for driving the brand, sales, supporting distribution, etc. So all of these demands from the business come into marketing on a work stack. You really need to understand what marketing need to make before you decide if you need to build an in-house agency to make it. So we can cover that in more detail. Once you know what you have to make, the list of briefs, ideally quarterly deliverables, we can touch on. You then go into the workflow, so the end-to-end process, which again is the benefit of in-housing because you are taking control of all of that as a brand and not outsourcing it along that journey. So the briefs coming into marketing, right through to the creation, right through to the approvals, and then the storage on your own systems. So you as a brand keep ownership of everything you've made, and it doesn't sit with outsourced agency partners. Technology, obviously huge. It's the operational backbone that makes everything work. And then you finally get to create the good campaigns. So you've understood the work stack, you have the right talent in the team who can create all of your brand communications. But in doing that, as I say, you're taking back control with your in-house team. So the brand governance, how it's managed, how it shows up consistently in all of your paid for and owned communication channels, you have full control of using tech and good ways of working. And then there's an approach, which could be a whole hour's talk in itself. None of this works unless you have the right operations, but also the right culture. You have a very unique cultural blend when you have an in-house team. You cannot treat them like an agency. Equally, you can't treat them like a supplier. They have to be equal to their marketing counterparts, their peers, their clients. And that's where it sometimes all goes wrong. If you don't, you could get all of those other things right. If you don't get the culture right, it actually won't work. So any questions on there before I go into each one of those in turn? Does that make high-level sense? Good. Okay. So yeah, what is on your work stack? You need to answer that first. It's pretty fundamental. This builds, there you go. The business demand coming in, it helps you define what your, we would say, core capabilities you need. So what do you actually need to make? So then what skills do you actually need to have in-house? Ideally, you want the team to be 100% of their time dedicated on just that one brand or your house of brands. You need to have enough work to justify a team of 1, 10, 130, depending on the size of your marketing output. But as I said before, they're never going to do everything. They're always going to work with an ecosystem of other specialist creative partners, be that media buying, brand, strategy, public relations, anything else. It would be very rare for your in-house agency to have those full capabilities. They're more making and doing the volume in the sort of funnel of your marketing communications, working with those other agency partners. So that's the work stack. And where it all goes wrong, if there's too much work, but not enough capacity in the in-house team, because however good they are, what talent you've got, they cannot cope with the demands coming in. So then their output is deemed to be of a lower quality that you might get from your external agencies. So that's always the first point of failure, and people never really understand that. Or they try and launch it from day one across their whole business, every single product line, scale it up overnight. It will fall over. Just choose one area, one product, and then scale it from there when people learn the ways of working.
Vicky, that is the hardest.
Too
Demand from the business.
much demand.
In the team, and negotiating with the right capacity, because it's not enough to say I have the right capacity in the team. I need to have the budget for that capacity, right?
You do.
So the hardest thing is this one, is to have enough capacity for the demands that are coming from the business and have enough power to push back on things that marketing should not be doing. That is the hardest bit. The first bit is the hardest.
It is, because then it all flows through and everything goes wrong. So we do lots of work in that area because you're setting it up for success, right? Or failure. People, give them 3 months of really unsophisticated planning. I see it all the time. It comes in from 10 different mailboxes from all across the business. Nobody knows what the priority is, what the first thing on the list is. They go into firefighting and panic mode. The quality becomes low. It's just a hamster wheel of getting the work out. Absolutely. And this is sort of the workflow, the second part. You have to have a sophisticated way of brief reception. So how the briefs are coming into the marketing department. Obviously, marketing managers need the capacity to do a good job, but also their in-house agency to support them. So this is where you need to get into the numbers and build up some management information, for example, the sizes of the briefs. And then you work out the velocity. So how many of this size briefs can a team do in a 12-week cycle, in a 2-week sprint? You will get it wrong at the start. It takes at least a year to build up this information. So then you slowly get into a quarterly planning cycle, knowing, so I knew on a big scale, the team could do 200 briefs in 12 weeks, but that was a team of 130 people. On a smaller scale now, we know we can do 50 briefs, and we know that's either 1 large, 3 mediums, or 5 smalls per people. You get these sort of metrics that you have to just keep repeating. As soon as you try and be helpful, squeeze some more extra work in, do a favor, a small brief becomes a large brief, it quite quickly falls over. So yes, I'd really encourage you to be absolutely ruthless with your data and actually protecting the team to do a great job ultimately for your brands. So that work stack schedule there, you've got to match the demand to the capacity you have. As I said, it's always in a hybrid, so you can also be fair to your other external agency partners so they know what you demand of them and expect from them, and give them prior warning so they can staff to support you. Marketing technology can help you with this. There's loads of project planning, scheduling tools that you can plug into your existing tech stack or buy new. There's a technology slide in a minute, but capacity and planning is key, but also what's coming into the system. So briefs are only as good as the paper they're written on, and the output will only be as good as the brief. So you see lots of lazy behaviors in an in-house environment where marketing might shortcut what they would normally do to their external agency partner, stop them in the corridor, quick chat over a coffee. Can you make me one of those, please? Yes, you are working together in collaboration, but if you don't have that brief, you don't know the volume, you actually haven't got anything to judge the work against. So again, you have to have the same discipline when you're working in-house. You can't relax the rules too much, or if, again, it will start falling over quite quickly. But the benefit of all this pain is the fact that you have brand governance right in the centre. It is hugely efficient, cost efficient, volume of assets and creative that you can actually output will always be more when you do it in-house versus working with all outsourced agency partners. So yes, tech. There's tech. This isn't exhaustive. This is just what we work with, and lots are coming in. So every stage of the process, tech. So that work stack management piece, lots of off the shelf or lots of quite expensive things. It depends on the level of your brand and maturity of what you need. You will always have digital makers, creatives, film, videographers, whatever you want to call it, in your in-house team. So they have all the classic tech stack that any creative department would have. And approvals, obviously, is key. This is the workflow. Get everything off of email. Email just doesn't work. Get it on a content management platform. So internal and external are all working from the same workflow and sharing the files and the assets in one place. The key about in-housing as well is you have control of those master assets. You can scale and adapt. You can test messages in market and respond really quickly with new creative or new copy and messaging. So your tech stack for adapts is absolutely the fundamental thing that you have in-house to manage the volume and the responsiveness. You can do it in hours and days versus weeks when you work in a sort of outsourced model would be the key benefit. But also for the clients, when you have an in-house team, you want to keep them for the highest value to have output that they can offer. So you need to give your clients templates so they can self-serve. Things like Canva are super simple once you've created the creative masters for the human resources department or the PR department to actually then just be able to look after their own output themselves. It doesn't always have to keep coming back into the in-house team. And then delivery, obviously serving it to all the ad platforms is often all managed in-house. You get that complete end-to-end control of timings, of deadlines, of media spend, and actually seeing in real time then as well all of the results from your media live in market. And asseting is the bit at the end. It all needs to come back into the centre and be stored on your digital asset management system, because then every new brief can be tagged to that piece to reuse. You see all the time external agencies hold on to everything, don't give it back. So then you're always creating new versus reusing what you've already invested in is the philosophy of an in-house. Okay, so that's the tech. And as I said, many levels of sophistication, but this simple triangle hopefully explains there's probably a year in each level of these maturities. you often start at the bottom with non-creative artwork, the high volume literature, leaflets, direct mail, more of that area. You can have huge cost savings by offshoring that as well and not actually doing it in your physical country. We do that a lot in the UK. It may be different here. The next level up is then to the start question of what is an in-house agency. This is probably 80% of what they are. A creative studio, an in-house hub, amplification hub, whatever people want to call it. Lego call it the Lego agency. There's lots of different words, but the brand work comes from the outside in to the in-house team is the standard-ish model. They're either in the office with you, literally sitting next to you, or they can be a dedicated team. Obviously now we all work so remotely with digital tech. You don't physically need to be sat together anymore. But the creative output is the always on social, on the paid, the owned channels, the film content, the digital display advertising on websites, the repurposing of that volume, print as well. It's that sort of volume, which is the biggest volume, which makes sense for your in-house agency to look after for you. Some brands become very sophisticated and actually do have what is a full service in-house agency. They could have a strategic planner sitting there, a creative director, all of the creative resources you would expect from your brand agency partner too. It just depends. But there's always the other specialists in the ecosystem, like I said, PR, media, etc. Or there's an increasing trend of media becoming in-housed as well to sit right next to the creators so they can actually own their media buy and deployment at the same time in-house. Yeah, so how do you know? How do you start? How do you know what size of team to even start in one vertical or area of your business? I always advise clients to think about it as fixed and flexible. So if you understand your work stack, if it's only 2 people, just think of what you could do in-house. It would keep 2 people 100% busy all of their time, and start there and invest. So you might not need 3D animation or film all the time. So you can bring in a specialist as a flexible resource to enhance that fixed. If you started with 3 people, 2 digital makers and a filmmaker, that filmmaker is not going to be a good return on investment if there's not enough film briefs coming in to your department. It's obvious, but you often see them set up wrong, where they have skills that they think they need, but actually the work isn't coming in from the business to justify hiring, either on your company marketing headcount, or we often work with clients where we embed people from an agency ecosystem because clients prefer that sometimes because creatives are looked after and feel part of a creative community whilst going in-house to work in a more corporate client environment. You still need that creative energy and spark to be looked after. So yeah, that would be a top tip. Think fixed headcount that you need, and then the flexible people you need to support that as you scale your ambitions. So this was just a super quick snapshot. As I was saying, some of those channels, some of this plays, maybe it doesn't on this one, it does on the next one. But we work with Royal London. Don't know if they're not a global brand, so you may not have heard of them. But if you have like I was saying at the start with the Lloyd's horse, a digital mascot often allows then the in-house team to take full control, as we do here with their pelican. But then that goes through every single channel, and we own everything from the social to the email to all of the volume work. Oh, there he is, he's flying now. But then also, an in-house capability. So I think it's just loading slowly. can make good stuff. They're very digital first creatives. You would expect them to have full animation and motion graphics. The golden rule should be everything should move now and nothing should be static. So all of our teams can make all of this in-house without any external support. And then if I click, there we go, loading. So almost the final piece of those 6 steps is, like I said, the governance piece. So we all think in classic marketing funnels, the brand, the broadcast, the TV, the radio, the strategy. What you're really doing is having that set by your brand agency partners, but then using technology, like a brand portal platform like Frontify or others you might have heard of on the market, where you can share all of those brand assets externally and for your internal team to use. And what allows you is absolute perfection of your brand because you're controlling it, but also the efficiency. You can reuse everything as well. So you're always, we use a crude word, sweating the assets, just more, making more from what you've done, adapting them at scale, allowing for that self-serve as well for the volume. So this is an example actually of just, see, I'm delighted to be here in beautiful Warsaw with, so we work with Smart Engine, our friends at Future Company as well. And we work together on the Edinburgh Fringe, which is kind of a crazy collaboration between Edinburgh and Poland. But the Fringe is the biggest arts festival actually in the world. And when we took on the brief for the Fringe, if anyone's ever been to the Edinburgh Fringe, I don't know, but the programme cover is always the thing of beauty, that everybody loves the Fringe programme cover. But we actually turned it on its head because nobody buys tickets from the programme cover. They buy the tickets from all of the digital media. So actually our creative always is digital first. So if we can sell tickets, so working in partnership, we're able to serve at least 300 messages, every combination of every type of genre of arts show, and then narrow it down to different ages who under 18s love comedy. The older people may prefer circus, but having that scale of in-house production and the partnership to make those assets allows us to be that responsive to the media and ticket sales hourly during what is only 2 weeks to sell tickets before the Fringe starts in August. And as I was saying then, the full creative capability isn't lost from that. So although you're doing huge volume, we do a minimum of 300, they're all motion, they're all film, video first, and on obviously every single size and ratio for the media. As we did at NatWest, I'll flick over this, so it's slow loading. An in-house team has the capability to film everything, to then scale a mini photo shoot onto every single piece of social and output in email. But what you get when you sort of take a macro view from it is this brand consistency, which you have full control. So we were making over 1,000 assets a month. So, but every single thing would go out with the brand at the heart and the governance at this scale, which really only an in-house agency could do. And the final slide before any questions is, like I said, all of this good stuff is very good, it's very technical, it's very operational, but none of it works unless you actually, A, treat your in-house team as humans and not capacity. The biggest failure is when people treat them as commodities and see how much work they can force into these digital makers. It just become browbeaten by the volume, just sort of relentlessly coming into them, and then the quality slips. So it's absolutely fundamental. You have to treat them as if you would your creative talent from any agency partner, not the in-house team that you can just throw work at in a really unplanned way, because you will lose that talent within 6 months or a year. So operations just don't work unless you treat the talent the same as you would your external partners. And that is it. That's all I was going to share. Obviously, we wanted questions and interactions. Any questions on that? Yeah, hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Because very often when we talk with the advertisers about media buying in-house,
Yes.
we can hear the argument that actually the agencies can buy media way more cheap. Therefore, this is the argument for giving especially on offline media buying within the agency. And in terms of the creative and production that you've been talking about, is there any clear argument for the advertiser to actually leave this part of the business within the agency? Because it seems that that would be very beneficial to actually in-house this.
Yeah. And you're right, the buying scale of a big media agency obviously gets great discounts and volumes that they pass on to their clients. But you do see now the responsiveness and the speed to market to do, digital content optimization so you can respond in real time and not wait for the weekly report. And also, clients are consolidating onto key platforms and channels that work for them. And they also now really understand their customers, and they have all of their data on their customer profiles, demographics. They own that themselves anyway. So once they actually understand their profiling, they can build their media plans now direct with the Google. The Meta tools are so intuitive and sophisticated. Clients who have a specialism in that can do it themselves. So you can kind of see that, yes, there is definitely a volume play, but all media companies should or could embed experts to work closely sat next to the clients, which they must be doing. I haven't personally experienced that, but that must be happening.
Because we actually did a swap. You equally pay for the cost of the agency, and you have to have a really good agency to optimize the performance of your media, and that's where it often fail. And it was cheaper for us to bring a good media planner in-house.
Yeah.
And let him manage the performance directly with metal as well, etc. And it's more cost effective. We don't have a cost of an agency, and it's real time because the guy optimized the performance of the media real time, and we don't have to wait for the reports. Now,
What works efficiency?
exactly.
Yeah.
Could be also a cost of the size. My company is not huge, so it maybe is the budget to have, it's not to get play, but certainly for a mid-sized B2B company, it works.
Thank you.
I will only comment here that to me, the hybrid world is the future.
Yes.
So, and you're right, it has to be that you decide what competencies, what skill set you have to have in-house as the own resource, and what competencies you outsource. Yeah. What I see, and I think this is what I build with my team, is I have agencies, I have in-house team, I have freelancers.
Yep.
With very
Flexible.
specific competencies that it's not cost effective for me to build in the team.
Yes.
But I need that if I build a new demand funnel and I need a very specific competency on a BigQuery on Google, I can pay for 3 months somebody, etc. So I think it's a hybrid.
Definitely.
Yes, we have to think hybrid world and bring the best of the skill set. Also think about the cost, because we have a set cost to manage in terms of the headcount and in terms of the program budget. So all of that together, hybrid.
Hybrid creative services, yes, that is the phrase we use. And you dial up and you dial down, and maybe depending on your trading calendar as well. Sometimes you might just need a big volume in the summer, you staff up, and then you stand down to a core team. Any other questions or thoughts? No?
I have one more.
Oh, good to know. Carry on, yeah.
Because you showed the fintech examples, and I believe that this is very natural for finance services to actually be of the in-house team because of the nature of the business. I was wondering whether you see in Europe, in UK, the in-house movement of the FMCG brands and this kind of business, which is traditionally more agency focused.
Yeah, the fintechs, you're right, because they're building their whole product from day one. They have no legacy. But equally, NatWest Group is hundreds of years old as a bank, but they were one of the first banks to in-house. They had a very forward-thinking CMO who sort of adopted that. But yes, they had to build that, up from a legacy. All of those brands I showed at the start, there's every sector has in-housing. It wouldn't be exclusive to financial services, does have high volume, complex, and a need for regulation, for sign-off, because it's obviously regulated communications. So it makes a lot of sense to control that versus less regulated industries, maybe. But it's universal. I mean, Burger King, the BBC, Google, everybody has the big brands. Lego, obviously, have big in-house agencies now that others are watching, trying to replicate or learn how to do for themselves. So.
Okay, so what do you think? What is the first impulse of building an in-house team?
The first impulse.
Yeah.
So.
Because we are using outside agencies and.
Yeah, the first motivation.
One person that is why.
Yeah, why?
Do it in-house. So.
I think it's the chief marketing officer will have a desire to look at efficiency. Efficiency is the first word. So it might be a cost-saving agenda. They just can't afford to keep spending large budgets with external partners. So they have a desire, could we do it cheaper ourselves by having in-house team? But then a fear, does cheaper mean less quality, which is a reasonable fear. That is the dynamic you have to first navigate. But still, marketing budgets are decreasing, not increasing, or it allows them to invest more money into media and into other marketing activity if they can create more themselves at scale. The other big driver is the explosion of volume that's happening now. Well, has been happening for years, but increasing.
Cost effective. That's the first.
Like almost universally always. But it is when you do the numbers. So it is cost, but it's also volume. The amount you can make so much more by having the technology and the skill to make it all yourselves versus external agency partners.
About keeping talents inside an in-house team, because this is a problem, because
It is.
we are putting costs as a first parameter. We have to slide costs, creativity, professionals, and if you are looking just for costs, it can be.
Yeah, cost is double-sided. So it's more cost effective to have in-house, not necessarily cheaper on a pound by pound, dollar by dollar, because you're getting more from that investment. The creative talent, their salary could be similar. The real problem is attracting and retaining the creative talent who want to work like this. A traditional agency model is exciting. There's lots of brands, there's lots of variety, it's fun. Whereas you widen that to a very narrow, you are just working on this one brand, doing this one thing, suddenly closes in, the creative opportunities. But in doing that, they get the real ownership and the depth. It's a different type of creative you hire sometimes, a more commercially driven creative who wants to really understand the business and the results of what they're doing versus just delivering a campaign and moving on to the next one. So it's a very complex, but all of that aside, you have to keep that creative talent fresh and engaged and excited, because the work will suffer over the years if they're bored and the approvals are slow and hard and they hear all the client politics and nonsense and chat and they just lose the love of it. So you have to look to move those opportunities around and really recognize that that is an issue at the start, the kind of burnout from a high volume operation and scale. Which is,
I do think that agency is worthwhile,
yeah,
because you need always freshness of the perspective.
yeah,
And typically agencies always had this sort of, creativity, innovation, of course, depends on agencies. I'm talking creative agencies, right? So that's why I think it's hybrid. I think it also depends which skill set, competencies, and which parts of the marketing, right? We're talking here content production, which is very sort of organized area. I think having external agencies is also important because it brings you innovation and outside perspective.
yes,
I wouldn't get rid of working with external agencies
no,
because we need them.
100.
It also, I think, depends on people.
The
Yeah, the creative people, if you have in-house creative people and they have always open mind, I think it's the freshest.
Absolutely, I still think. I mean, everybody is free to. I think I will always want to work with external agencies.
Okay.
But you are entitled to in-sourced and I agree with you absolutely, no doubt.
yes, I think, and I agree, it makes a lot of sense. I think the efficiency piece is them doing less for you, so doing the real high value work of strategy, creative concepts, learning from other clients that they will look after that aren't your sector, that they can bring all that knowledge to you. But the traditional old-fashioned way of working was they would then go right through to delivery for you. That's the efficiency piece to bring in-house potentially.
There is there are two things. It's creativity and it's efficiency. And this is why it's so bloody hard now for the CMO, because there are two very different skill sets. It's strategy, business, creativity, innovation, and efficiency.
Yeah.
You need to think almost about your rentability of the operations you manage, and there are opposites. So
Yeah.
so it's very hard.
Yeah. But a good hybrid approach helps hopefully solve that problem for you. So
It's good debate.
good debate. Great. Well, thank you so much. I hope you've taken away some notes that might help you in your decision making, and find me on LinkedIn if you want to ask any questions. Really happy to share experiences and any insights to help you further. So it's been lovely being here. You have an early coffee break now, so thanks for that. Unless there's anything else, great.